Today I'm finally talking about Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Welcome to Candlewick Library. I'm Cheryl. I really wanted to get this video out in September. I had every intention to do so, and I just didn't get around to it. So I am finally today talking about Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling. There isn't as much for me to talk about with this one as there was my last video, but I will talk about a few things. I finished making my curriculum for my daughter for the second book, and I'm kind of just going to go through a few of the points from this. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is my least favorite of the Harry Potter books. And again, like I've said before, I still really enjoy it. It's just there's something about it, and I'm not 100% sure why it has always been my least favorite, but it just doesn't appeal to me as much as some of the other ones. This is going to be a very spoilery video. I'm just going to kind of walk through the curriculum that I made with information that I gave my daughter about this book. Pretty much anything I say is going to be a spoiler for this book. So first up, let's just do an overview. In this book, Harry is returning to Hogwarts, and the big identity quest of this book is, am I the heir of Slytherin? The hero's journey is going to be trying to figure out if the Chamber of Secrets is real, and if it is, who is trying to open it. And that person would be the heir of Slytherin, and wondering if Harry really was supposed to be in Slytherin or not. If you don't want any spoilers on this book, you'll need to go now. But there also will be some spoilers for later books in the series. So I will let you know before that happens. One of the interesting things about this book is that I talked about how the Harry Potter books are written in a ring cycle where books match up with other books. Well, this book would match up with book 6, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. And the working title for Chamber of Secrets was The Half-Blood Prince. So she did change that to the later book, but that shows that they had certain things in common that would make that title be applicable to both. I'm going to talk at the end about a few of the things that they have in common. We see at the beginning of this book that not much has changed. Harry is back with the Dursleys. He's having a horrible birthday, and they haven't changed. They're still horrible. He's still not being treated well. Then in chapter 2, we meet Dobby for the first time. And Dobby, I think Dobby is part of it. Like, I came to love Dobby later, but Dobby annoyed me so much in this first book with him, especially at the beginning, because I understand that he felt like he couldn't communicate what he wanted to Harry, and so he was trying to get what he wanted without communicating. But the fact that he was, withholding letters from Harry, and that he got Harry in trouble, and later that he tries to get him hurt in the Quidditch game, I couldn't stand it. I was just, oh, you're causing so many problems, Dobby. Get control of yourself. That's probably part of the reason that it's one of my least favorites. But in this chapter, Harry ends up literally trapped in his room. And this brings an interesting thing to note, that Harry is kind of the Dobby of his family. There's the Dursleys, the mom and the dad, and the spoiled only child. And you have Draco's family, the mom and the dad, and the spoiled only child. And then they have a character that is basically a servant to the family that isn't treated well, that wears clothes that don't fit them. One has Harry, one has Dobby. But then thankfully, Ron and his brothers come to save the day in the flying blue car, and they get Harry out of his prison and bring him to the Weasley home. And this is when we really get an introduction to the Weasley family. When I was doing the course from the Literary Life podcast, one of the things that I then did some more research on, and I just found it so fascinating, is Weasleys are named that because it's like a weasel, and weasels live in a burrow. In the medieval bestiary books, there's one, I got it. Oh, I wish I would have had it out, but I don't know where it is right now. My library is still kind of in chaos because right now we're building a library in this room. But it had the weasel as an enemy to the basilisk. Each of the Weasleys have a name that has to do with royalty of some kind. She talked about a lot of the connections between King Arthur and the story of Harry Potter, where the legend of King Arthur has his life in danger, and he is taken away and hidden by Merlin, and has a lowly upbringing like Harry does. And so also then there's the stone, the sword in the stone, or in some tales it's from the lake. And Harry does have a scene where he is given a sword that wouldn't have been given to just anybody. Looking at their names, obviously Arthur Weasley is like King Arthur. Molly is another form of the name Mary. And of course, there have been a lot of Queen Marys, and one Queen Mary was the mother of King George. Bill is a shortened version of the name William, and obviously there's been a lot of King Williams. Charlie, again, a lot of Charles. Percy's full name is Percival, like the knight. George, obviously, again, there's been King George's. And then Fred, short for Frederick. And she said that the redheaded Prince of Wales was named Frederick. Ron is a shortened version of a long Welsh name that is the name of King Arthur's spear. And then Ginny, her name is Minerva, which is an alternate spelling of Guinevere. So they all have names that are royal. I can't remember if I brought up in another video or not how the name of Diagon Alley is, if you say it fast, diagonally. So it's like it's meeting with our world in some places, but it's not all the way the same. Well, when Harry does the flu powder, he ends up in Nocturne Alley. So again, if you say that fast, it's nocturnally, which is relating to night and dark. And this is where you go to buy dark magic. And then also we meet Gilderoy Lockhart in chapter 4 when he goes to Diagon Alley. In the class, when they were talking so much about alchemy, there's so much talk about gold. And she talked about false gold and how we can see false gold or fool's gold, and it looks like gold, but it's not. When things are gold plated or gilded, then it's something that isn't gold, but is covered in gold or in fake gold to have the appearance of being wholly gold. And the goal of the alchemist is to get to gold. So the false goal would be false gold. And Gilderoy Lockhart is false gold. There's a lot of gold surrounding him. He has gold hair. His book has gold lettering. And the false gold of Gilderoy Lockhart is his fame, his deception and his fame. And at the end, Harry has to go down in the underground with Gilderoy. And it's kind of that fake gold versus real gold in that situation. On Pottermore, Rowling gives a lot of extra information on Gilderoy Lockhart and his upbringing and how he basically was this golden child. He could do no wrong. And he went to Hogwarts thinking he was going to have this amazing reception like what Harry got, that everybody would be amazed at his ability. He was good and smart, but not in the way he thought he would be. He wasn't a standout. And so that would be why later on he would perfect a memory charm and do what he did. And she also explains in the article why Dumbledore would have hired him. If you want to go read the whole thing, it's not called Pottermore anymore. I don't remember what it's called, but you could go and find that. Just if you put in Pottermore, it will take you to the website. But you can see all of that and how Dumbledore basically was doing it in order to out him as being false. One of the funniest things about him being the perfecter of a memory charm, and that being what he's known for, is that when you first meet him, he's wearing forget-me-not blue robes. We also meet Moaning Myrtle in this book, who also is pretty annoying. And she did give some information on that she thought of Moaning Myrtle, the idea because of how often women would cry in bathrooms. And so that idea was just kind of in her mind. And again, through the whole book, as things start to happen, as Harry starts hearing the voice and people start getting petrified, you see that thought going through Harry's mind. Was I supposed to be in Slytherin? Am I the heir? People are asking that about him. He speaks Parseltongue without even realizing it. And so there is that identity quest, that identity journey throughout the whole book. They finally do the polyjuice potion. J.K. Rowling has also said that every single ingredient that went into polyjuice potion was thought out. She picked the things that she did based on how they sounded. If they sound like lace wing, lace gave the idea of an intertwining or binding together of two identities. Leeches, because they suck the essence out of one and into the other, etc. And then, of course, Hermione ends up being petrified herself. And one of the interesting things to note is that Hermione was the name of a statue in Shakespeare's Winter's Tale. And Hermione now comes in, he says she looks like a statue. And one thing I wanted to bring up here was I also said that in the first book, all of the trials that they have to do at the end, that each one of those goes along with one of the books. And so the second trial was the Devil's Snare. And that matches up with Chamber of Secrets because one, Chamber of Secrets has a lot more herbology in it than normal with the mandrakes and other things. And then two, they have to get rid of the Devil's Snare with fire, like trying to make it with the sunshine. There is the phoenix in this book, so there's a lot of imagery of rising from the ashes. And then also Hermione is the one that figures out how to deal with the Devil's Snare. And Hermione is also the first one to figure out what is happening with the Chamber of Secrets. She gets petrified before she can tell them, but she has figured it out. In chapter 15, we meet Aragog, and to me, that might be another reason that this book isn't my favorite, because I hate spiders so much. I am terrified of spiders, and now we get lots and lots of spiders and one giant one that would eat humans. But it's also interesting that they are going into the forest to meet Aragog, because every single book Harry goes into the forest before the end. Once Ginny is taken, then Harry and Ron have to go down into the chamber, and they take Gilderoy with them. Obviously, since he's not who he pretends to be, he's a coward and he's very afraid. He doesn't want to be there, and he tries to use the memory spell on them. Proverbs 26:27: Whoso diggeth a pit shall fall therein, and he that rolleth a stone, it will return upon him. He falls into his own trap, and his own spell backfires against him. It seems like Harry is almost always separated from those he loves in order to finish his quest. And so here we see that happen again. He is separated from Ron. He has to go on alone. And we meet the heir of Slytherin for the first time. He finds Tom Riddle and finds out that Tom Riddle is Lord Voldemort. One of the most interesting things to me about that was talked about in the Harry Potter class that I took is that there is a lot of talk about books being dangerous, fairy tales and magic being dangerous for kids to read about. And that is one of the arguments against kids reading Harry Potter, is that it is a dangerous book because it has magic in it. And they talked a lot about how J.K. Rowling is showing us that some books are dangerous, but it's not the ones that we think are dangerous. Obviously, there are some that we look at and we say that's a dangerous book, and it is. C.S. Lewis in The Abolition of Man talked about this as well, and I believe Tolkien had some essays about it. But it was basically that myths and legends and fairy tales are not the dangerous books. The dangerous books are the ones that say something is true that isn't. Realistic stories can be the lie because they teach children that there is nothing more than this world. And we know that there is more than this world. Also, modern textbooks that are changing history, or religious books of false religions, those things that aren't looked at as dangerous are going to be more dangerous and more deceptive. And so J.K. Rowling plays this out by having the diary, which is a dangerous book, is put inside of her textbook. Harry goes into the diary seeing things with his own eyes, feeling things that he believes are real, but they're not. So he is deceived by this dangerous book. And one of the things that I thought about while I was playing around with those ideas and thinking about it, one of the thoughts that came to me is all of this would have been avoided if they didn't have such a fear of the history and the name. If there was no fear surrounding the name Lord Voldemort, then they would probably talk more about him. They wouldn't just talk about it in whispers, say he who would not be named. They would have classes teaching about the history with Voldemort. Everybody would know everything. And if they did that, Harry would have known that Voldemort's name was Tom Riddle, and he would have immediately known who the diary belonged to. And that shows what fear of history and truth can do. There's also some religious imagery in these last couple of chapters of the book. There's mythological imagery. One of them is the myth of Orpheus, the son of Apollo and Calliope, where he had to travel to the underworld to rescue his wife. And of course, whenever anyone goes to the underworld, there's usually the crossing of the river Styx. There's monsters sometimes that you have to battle in an underground setting. And so there's a lot of that we see at the end of this book. And then the basilisk is historically a Satan image, and the phoenix is historically a Christ image. And so we have that battle again between the good and the evil. And in fact, one of the things she talked about in the class as well was that when a dragon is killed, it's always like from the inside out. It's somebody gets swallowed and they kill the dragon from the inside, or they kill from the belly, and they're not usually killing it in the same way they would kill a different animal. And the mouth of the dragon was sometimes thought of as death, like a cave. Jesus Christ was put in a tomb when he died. And so a tomb or a cave or a dragon's mouth was considered a death thing. And so with Harry, when it comes to eat him and he stabs it through the mouth, that is very much like a slaying of a dragon and a slaying of Satan from the inside out. The phoenix is Christ's image, one, because it's burned and then it arises from its own ashes. It also has the healing tears. And with the alchemy, the spiritual alchemy, also has red and black and gold in its coloring. There was one thing I tried to find that was a painting that was shown in the class of the harrowing of hell, where it was an artist's depiction of Jesus going to hell to free the imprisoned souls. And in that painting, he was kind of floating out of hell up through a cave, and the people were hanging on to his robes and hanging down from him. And that imagery is kind of like the end of this book, with Fox flying out of the underground labyrinth, and Harry and everybody else holding on to Fox's tail. And I thought that was interesting, but I cannot find that painting. So I don't know where she got it from for the class, but I couldn't find it. To wrap up, like I said, there's not as many things for me to talk about with this book. If you have more thoughts, please leave them in the comments. But in the last video, I talked about the series as a whole is a hero's journey, but each book is also a small hero's journey, and they all have a start, an escape, a mystery, a crisis, a descent, a combat, Christ symbols, a return, a revelation, and a finish. And so in this book, he starts again at Privet Drive. He escapes with the Weasleys. The mystery is the Chamber of Secrets. The crisis is when Ginny is taken. And then, of course, the descent is going down into the lair of the basilisk. The combat is down there with the basilisk as well. The Christ symbol is Fawkes the Phoenix. They return by Fawkes carrying them out. He meets with Dumbledore again for the revelation, and then finishing, he's going home for the summer. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is the things that book 2 has in common with book 6. And so this will be the most spoilery section for the rest of the series if you don't want to hear these. There's not very many, or I'm not going to talk about all of them, but some of them are exams being canceled, rumors of Harry being a dark wizard, Hogwarts being threatened with closure, Harry and Draco dueling using a spell from Snape, Tom Riddle appearing, Polyjuice potion being used to either transform into or out of being Crabbe and Goyle. And there's also the spider. I think this is a good book that moves the story along. It gives us more information. It gives us more connections to characters. I hope you learned a few things. I would love to hear more of your thoughts. Anyone who has loved this book, I would love to know what you love about it. If you don't like it, what you don't like about it, and just any thoughts you have about Chamber of Secrets. I probably won't put out my video of Prisoner of Azkaban, which is my favorite book, until I probably won't put that one out until December or January. And then Goblet of Fire, probably not until spring. I really wanted to have all of these videos out this fall, but it's just not working out that way. And in fact, I don't think I'm going to have the whole series finished by the end of the year. I think this is going to be a challenge that goes into the next year. I don't want to read them too far in advance of when I'm making the curriculum for my daughter, because it's easier when I write it right after I read it. Like this video, this curriculum, it's been a while since I read the book, and I felt like this would have been better had I just finished reading it. And so I have finished Prisoner of Azkaban, and that's why I want to get to it sometime in the next couple of months. And I have been reading Goblet of Fire, but I've kind of put it on hold because I feel that way. I feel like I need to be making sure that I'm taking better notes and I know exactly what I'm doing to make sure that the curriculum is exactly what I want it to be. And so I probably won't even go to book 5 and above until I am ready to make the curriculum. So just so if you were curious about it, you'll know that it probably won't happen, that they won't be coming out all at once. It will be a few months probably between each video. But hopefully it was still interesting and you still got something out of this.